Venezuela's Attorney General reveals new details linking opposition figure Juan Guaido to drug gangs. North Bermuda takes a lashing from Category 3 Hurricane Humberto. And the ousted Tunisian President Ben Ali dies in Saudi Arabia. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Doris Polo. Venezuela's Attorney General Tariq William Saab gave an update on the current investigation into the opposition figure Juan Guaido and his alleged links to drug trafficking networks. He said new photos had come out that corroborate such a connection.
First, we want to salute the signing of the agreement between the government and parts of the opposition and denounce things that media has tried to cover. The fact that one of the witnesses of Juan Guaido's illegal entrance to Colombia was sought and someone tried to kill him. Since they couldn't find him, they killed his family. We are investigating the close and organic relations between Juan Guaido and this narco-paramilitary group. Media try to undermine photo evidence that some have called uncomfortable. It is not uncomfortable. They are scandalous, disgusting.
The new dialogue between the Venezuelan government and some opposition parties is pressing ahead. Our correspondent Madeleine Garcia reports from Caracas.
So it's 3 days since the government signed an agreement with the opposition parties to make progress on 6 points. These included the return of Chavista lawmakers to the National Assembly, which would be a step towards reflecting on the members of the National Electoral Council. Also, the release of imprisoned opposition politicians. We saw that begin on Tuesday with the freeing of Edgar Zambrano, the vice president of the National Assembly, who had been arrested after he joined the attempted coup on April 30th. On Wednesday, we saw another significant opposition politician, Javier Bertuzzi, join the dialogue process. He is an evangelical pastor who stood in the presidential election in 2018. He signed up to the agreement and joined with what government is calling the democratic opposition. That is in distinction to the violent wing of the opposition led by Juan Guaido, who effectively represents the United States in Venezuela. So now the different working groups will be set up as part of this dialogue. The government says it still wants to continue with the dialogue backed by Norway. And it hopes the government of Norway will be able to persuade those other opposition parties to return to the talks. So we now have two processes, the Norway and the other process that we might call the Caracas process. And the hope is that these may come together as the country heads towards election for a new National Assembly, possibly in the first month of next year.
Now, as the United Nations General Assembly gets underway in New York, the Secretary General Antonio Guterres also said he hopes the Norway-backed talks for Venezuela will be revived. And he said he aims to arrange a meeting between the Venezuelan and Colombian governments.
I think the most likely scenario is that organized by Norway, which was interrupted, as you know, but which I hope will restart. Still, I will take advantage of this summit to speak to Colombia and Venezuela, because it is very important to avoid any escalation of the conflict in the region.
Hurricane Humberto lashed Bermuda with strong winds Wednesday evening as the powerful Category 3 storm skirted just north of the islands. While Bermuda avoided a direct hit, the storm unleashed rain and fierce winds of up to 193 kilometers per hour, while it also pounded seas. Humberto's hurricane-strength winds packed quite a punch, snapping trees in half on the island. The storm had knocked out power in 80% of the territory. However, electricity had been restored to most homes by midday on Thursday. All schools and government offices will remain closed throughout Thursday. Officials aren't reporting any deaths from the storm. Meanwhile, Bermuda's famous causeway, the strip of land and bridges connecting the main island to St. David's Island, suffered storm damage and remains closed at this time. The Emergency Management Organization is asking the public to avoid using the roadway, which is now being inspected by engineers. Bermuda's National Security Minister provided an update as Humberto hit on Wednesday evening.
The winds are still very high, so encouraging everyone to remain indoors. We've just spoken to officials from Belco. They have indicated that approximately 28,000 people are without power. Tomorrow morning at approximately 7:30, we will be giving an update to share with you how Bermuda fared during the storm. I would like to thank all of our first responders and all of the people that have worked in CalmOps overnight for their hard work.
As Humberto moved past Bermuda, this island's Premier David Burt has expressed relief that no lives were lost as a result of the storm. In a statement issued on Thursday morning, Burt says, "We've made it through and everyone is safe," adding that that's what's more important. The Premier also informed that cleanup has begun so the island can return to normal operations. The Atlantic hurricane season, which runs through November 30th, has ramped up in recent weeks. Hurricane Dorian devastated the Bahamas, killing at least 52 people, with hundreds more still unaccounted for. Now, earlier we spoke to journalist Don Burgess of the Bermuda Media Council, who is on the ground in the storm-affected island. He provided an update on the situation.
The part of the island that received the most damage was along the north shore, mainly because that's where we were getting the winds as Humberto passed to our northwest. And there were quite a few roofs in the crawl area of Hamilton Parish that lost little bits and pieces of it. It wasn't like a whole roof that was taken off, but a little bit. Several of the hotels aren't taking any guests today, just because they're trying to fix and clean up. So Southampton Fairmont Princess is one, and the Hamilton Princess is another. The Inverlory Hotel in Paget also had a little bit of roof damage. There was one person on a boat who was rescued. There were 17 hurricane-related fires and 3 structural fires that the Bermuda Fire and Rescue Service attended to help put out. So overall, we were pretty lucky not to receive extensive damage.
But Humberto is not the only storm being tracked. In the last few hours, Tropical Storm Jerry has strengthened to a Category 1 hurricane further out in the Atlantic. The center of Jerry will be near or north of the northern Leeward Islands on Friday, and it will pass north of Puerto Rico on Saturday. Tropical storm watches are in effect in Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Martin, and several other islands. Artisanal fishermen in Peru are demanding that the government declares a fishing emergency after the plundering of some species by big transnationals. We have more in this report.
The crisis in Peru has forced these small fishermen to abandon their boats and urge President Martin Vizcarra to solve their problems. They say the volume of fish has decreased in the last few months as industrial vessels have taken all the anchovy.
Anchovies are the beginning of the food chain, and their excessive fishing does not only harm fishermen but also mammals, birds, and the different fish that eat them. Let us not forget that the smallest fish are food for the larger ones.
Peruvian laws are designed to benefit the big transnational fishing companies. For example, the legal size permitted for certain species has been reduced, and the large companies have been given exclusive rights to some fish like hake.
It is not possible that a kilo of chicken costs $10 and a kilo of hake, for example, in the Piura region, costs 10 cents. That's what the transnationals are paying in the Paita port. Meanwhile, in the market, we find a hake fillet at a cost of $8. And who's fishing them? These big transnationals, foreign transnationals.
According to the 2017 census, in Peru there are almost 75,000 small fishermen. Experts say the number has fallen by almost half because fishing isn't profitable anymore. Many fishermen have had to find other sources of income as a result.
Our artisan fishermen are the ones that preserve our marine species, and this is part of our sovereignty. It's about safeguarding our natural resources, especially for consumers. It is insane that Peru has one of the highest levels of anemia and malnutrition in the world, despite having a sea stretching more than 200 miles.
The transnationals caught more than 2 million tons of anchovy in the first half of 2019, most of it for export as flour and oil, while small fishermen supplying fish to the local market catch only 150,000 tons every year.
We'll take a short break now. When we come back, Nigeria continues to repatriate citizens from South Africa after a wave of xenophobic violence. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. Former Tunisian President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, who was ousted during the 2011 Arab Spring, has died at the age of 83. Ben Ali died in exile in Saudi Arabia just days after Tunisia held a free presidential election. He fled from his country in 2011 as citizens rose up against his rule in a revolution that inspired other Arab Spring uprisings abroad. In 2011, a Tunisian court sentenced Ali in absentia to 35 years in prison on charges ranging from corruption to torture. And in 2012, a military court sentenced him to another 20 years for inciting murder and looting. The government of Nigeria has continued repatriating its citizens from South Africa following a spate of xenophobic violence that left 12 people dead and dozens injured. On Wednesday, more than 100 retainees arrived in the commercial capital Lagos from South Africa aboard a private chartered aircraft. Nigerian citizens were some of the worst affected migrants in the latest wave of xenophobic attacks, which started in the city of Pretoria before spreading to Johannesburg and other parts of the country.
They affected us because for the business, nothing is going on, nothing is moving, everything is static, nothing is going on. Even the kids, they are staying, even they told my kids by the school that they are coming to ban them by the school, but from there, my kids, she's scared to go to school. So I decided, no, it's better we come back to our home.
I don't think I was able to go back to South Africa because if you're walking the streets, you're not safe. You understand? So those people that are still angry by themselves. So the most, what surprised me a lot, when they're breaking the shop, governments don't even care. They don't even bring a police to come and help the situation. So I don't think I can be able to return back to South Africa.
A day before the World Climate Strike, young activists are speaking out across Africa against climate change. In the Rwandan capital, Kigali, 5-year-old Ugandan Leah Namujirwa has called for action to save the planet.
Are busy fixing a mess that they did not create. Young people from Kampala to New York, Cape Town to New York are raising up for the climate crisis.
St. Kitts and Nevis is celebrating its 36th anniversary of independence from Britain, and in doing so under the theme Unify, Transform, Enrich, Uplifting Communities. The Prime Minister, in his independence message, outlined some of his administration's achievements, including a reduction in the crime rate.
Every Independence Day, we should be gathering as a people who are safer, more prosperous, more united than the year before. And that is why my government has invested more money on public safety and security. We are encouraged by the very dramatic reduction in gang-related homicides and by the peace and goodwill which now abound. We thank our law enforcement officers for their work, the families and various intervention teams for their outreach to the marginalized and vulnerable groups.
Meanwhile, CARICOM has noted the significant progress St. Kitts and Nevis has made as the member state marks its 36th independence anniversary. In a congratulatory message, CARICOM Secretary General Erwin Larocque said the country was justified in celebrating its achievement with pride. Larocque also acknowledged the unwavering commitment and leadership of Prime Minister Harris as chairman of CARICOM during the first 6 months of the year at a challenging time for the community. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the government is responding to a legal challenge to the nation's anti-same-sex laws. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves says parties who wish to join the suits with the government are welcome. However, he says it is not intended to be in a combative way. In July, Javin Johnson and Sean McLeish filed court proceedings to challenge the country's buggery and gross indecency laws, which criminalize homosexuality. Both men are asylum seekers in the United Kingdom and United States, respectively. They are arguing that these laws strips their dignity and autonomy. Brazil's landless workers movement has issued an urgent warning that the police are preparing to evict one of its settlements. It said 50 police vehicles had arrived at the Jose Rodriguez camp in Paraná state early in the morning to remove 54 families. The MST members have been occupying and cultivating the land since 2016. The eviction had apparently been requested by the mayor of Laranjal. The MST says 2 more of its camps are also being threatened in Pernambuco, in the northeast. Mexico will open a new investigation into the disappearance of 43 students in Ayotzinapa back in 2014. The Attorney General's office said it would re-investigate almost from scratch what happened to the 43 after they clashed with local police 5 years ago.
In yet another bid to uncover the truth, the parents of disappeared meet with the public prosecutor in the National Palace.
We came out peacefully. We gave all the relevant documents we have to the new prosecutor in charge of the case. We have been given a commitment that we would meet in 2 months' time, and I think the Attorney General's office has expressed willingness, as has the President, who was with us.
Ahead of the meeting, the families complained of the slow pace of investigation carried out by the previous prosecutor, who they say failed to cooperate sufficiently with the Presidential Commission for and access to justice.
Unfortunately, we are confronted with the same issues. While the Commission is willing to investigate, there are still no results. We get desperate sometimes. We've been seeking answers for 5 years.
Special Prosecutor Omar Gómez Trejo has assured that a new investigation will be launched. He says it's to ensure that the individuals responsible for the students' disappearance do not walk free.
We are immediately scrutinizing all the information that has come to hand. We believe the evidence we have would be of value to the courts. We are going to hand over all the evidence, and from there on, they will proceed accordingly.
Meanwhile, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has asked anyone with information concerning the students' whereabouts to contact the authorities. You can help because this is an open wound. This has to do with justice. It has to do with humanity. Right now, families, colleagues, and social organizations are preparing to take part in mass protests in the state of Guerrero and the capital, planning for the end of the month. They will do so under the rallying call for the truth, justice, and punishment for those responsible.
Former FARC combatants held a fashion show in Bogota to promote peace and reconciliation in Colombia. Models took to the catwalk to display pieces made in collaboration between ex-combatants and victims. The aim of the show was to convey a message of their commitment to reconciliation and peace. The ex-combatants said they will continue to pursue peace despite the Colombian government's failure to honor the 2016 peace agreement. Coming up, the 2 main political rivals are struggling to form a unity government in Israel as they each want to lead the coalition. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. The 2 main rivals in Israel's elections have reached a deadlock on forming a unity government as both leaders demand leadership of the coalition. The leader of the Blue and White Party, Benny Gantz, who won slightly more seats than the current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, expressed interest in forming a unity government, but only on the condition that he would become Prime Minister. Benjamin Netanyahu agreed, but insists he should be the leader of the coalition government. Neither Netanyahu nor Gantz won enough seats to form a government of their own.
I'm interested in an intent to form a wide and liberal unity government headed by me, a government that will express the people's will and our basic promises for the public. There
is only two options, either a government I run or a dangerous government that is based on Arab parties. And during these times more than ever, especially in front of the big political and security challenges we face, there must not be a government based on Arab anti-Zionist parties.
Lev Grinberg from the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at Ben-Gurion University spoke to Telesur about the Israeli election results.
As a matter of fact, what we must understand now is that it's almost the same situation than before. We have two blocs that are unable to form a coalition, and mainly they can block each other, but not more than that. The only party that is not positioning itself here or there is the party of the Russian voters, led by Lieberman. And he was the person that brought about these elections because he didn't want to join Netanyahu, despite the fact that he was part of his coalition in the past. Now he's demanding the formation of what he calls a national secular unity government. That means he's trying to force Netanyahu and the Benny Gantz, the two big parties, to form a coalition with his party, and to exclude both the religious parties and, for sure, the Arab parties. This is the situation now, and Netanyahu is doing everything he can do in order to prevent his indictment. This is his problem, because at the moment he's not a prime minister, he will be probably indicted. We can understand that no one will be able to ignore what's going on now. The attempt to build a national coalition in this or other way, it will be to prevent the Palestinian parties to be part of the political game. As a matter of fact, this was the main attack on Yitzhak Rabin 25 years ago, that he's building a coalition based on the Palestinian parties, voters and citizens. And the complete delegitimation of Rabin brought to his assassination. Now, Netanyahu is exactly doing the same kind of argument, delegitimizing the right of the citizens, Palestinian citizens, to be part of the political game. And in a sense, it might work. Because if you don't count the 12 members of the Knesset voted by the Palestinians, you cannot build an alternative coalition to Netanyahu. This is the idea, to prevent any alternative coalition.
A Japanese court has cleared 3 former Tokyo Electric Power executives of negligence regarding the Fukushima nuclear plant disaster. In 2011, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake triggered a massive tsunami that devastated the Fukushima plant, causing 3 of its 6 reactors to melt down and release radiation. Prosecutors had accused the 3 bosses of failing to act on information that showed the risks to the plant from a major tsunami. But the executives argued that although they knew, they were not responsible for day-to-day operations. It's the only criminal case to arise out of the world's worst nuclear crisis since Chernobyl in 1986. The ruling angered protesters outside the court, many of them survivors of the disaster. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.